Good afternoon to you wherever you're social distancing, and welcome to this Next Step Support webinar on online careers fairs. My name's Matt. I'm with the Next Step Support team, and I'm just going to go through a couple of quick little rules today so that it makes life easier for everyone. If you want to ask a question, we're gonna have our own question, little discussion in a second. But if you want to ask a question, please pop it in the question pane on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you see a question in there that you want answered, please upvote it, because what we'll tend to do towards the end is we'll pick the most popular questions to answer and put them to the panel, so that hopefully the majority questions get answered. I just want to say, don't go too specific here. I know there's going to be a lot of questions about many different individual situations and scenarios. We're trying to keep this as broad and useful as possible to everybody. So please just bear that in mind when you're asking questions. I'm going to hand you over to our panel. So I'm going to, on my screen, and I know it might not be the same for everybody, I'm going to go clockwise. So if I could just ask Ashlyn to introduce herself first and give some of her background and expertise.
Yeah, my name is Aisling. I'm the events manager with Grad Ireland. I've been running events with Grad Ireland, graduate recruitment events, for the last 12 years, very much focused on face-to-face realm, but now we've moved to virtual. So we've run one virtual careers fair and are in the process of setting up another now.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And if I could move on to Oriane, if you wouldn't mind.
Hi guys, so my name's Oriane. I am one of the senior talent acquisition partners at Experian. So my role is basically early careers recruitment. So all of you lovely graduates and students wanting to join us, I'll be your key contact. I've been in the field for about 5 years now. I've ran all sorts of career fairs, both virtual and physical. And I actually joined my current company during lockdown. So I've been at the thick of, I suppose, that digital revolution, which is quite exciting. So I know exactly how you guys feel.
Thank you very much. And Yugochi.
Hi everyone, I'm Yugochi. So I'm an early careers recruiter at Marsh & McLennan Companies. We are a global professional services firm, and we cover areas of risk, strategy and people, and we consist of actually 4 companies. We recruit for apprentices, graduates, interns and placements across 3 of these. So we've got Marsh, which is the world's leading insurance broker and risk advisor, Mercer Consulting, and Guy Carpenter, which is a reinsurance firm. And I've been at MMC since February, so I was there, I think, 2 weeks before lockdown happened, so I've been working from home ever since.
Goodness. Thank you very much. I can see a few people in the chat with little orange flags next to their name. If you are having trouble with any video or audio, please just note that Chrome is probably the best browser to use for this. It's just the most compatible with Livestorm, and it'll make the viewing process a lot easier. So just a heads up, if you're having any technical issues, because I can see those orange flags, please do try and log in on Chrome. So I think it's best if we start with the very obvious one, because obviously, you know, we've been in lockdown for what seems like forever. But you know, the online careers fairs, you may not have been to an online careers fair yet, particularly if you're just starting your university term. So if I could just, again, if we can go clockwise, starting with Ashlyn, could I just, you know, should we just try and answer the question, what actually is an online careers fair?
Yeah, so the online careers fair is really an online environment that enables students and graduates to engage with employers to understand what opportunities are there, or what are available. And the online environment kind of can differ, so that engagement piece can differ depending on platforms. So you can have some information, text information and videos up about the employers. You can have chat, text chat option, or you can have one-to-one face-to-face calls like this, and also webinars. But again, it varies depending on the platform, but ultimately it's there to, virtual environments are there to facilitate that engagement that we're missing from the face-to-face.
Thank you. Oriane, perhaps if you could give us a bit about your experience with online careers fairs.
Yeah, I think Ashley's just done a great job of summarising exactly what it is, so probably taken all the key points. But I think from my experience, it is definitely a change. So if you are used to physical events, be prepared that it does feel different, it runs slightly different, and there are adjustments that you need to go through, both I suppose from an employer side, but also as a student. So be prepared that actually you might not be able to ask as many questions, they might not get covered throughout the day, and you really have to listen. You talk over each other quite a bit. So I suppose it's understanding the different events, how they're going to be run, and then thinking how you can get the best out of that opportunity in that event.
Thank you. And I think that's a key point, is how different it feels. You know, a lot of people, when you go to a careers fair, you know you need to be turned out in pristine clothing and everything else. But when you're online, I mean, if you know, Ashlyn, you mentioned that webinars are a part of it. At the moment, we can't actually see people. You know, and this would you might have this as a typical employer panel at a webinar, where you know everybody's discussing the areas of recruitment and they want to talk to people, but they may not have that connection that you would get if you were there in person. Yugochi, how have you found online careers fairs so far?
Yeah, I would say they're really good. I mean, you still get to visit employers at their virtual booths, so you still have that normality, but just in the comfort of your own home. Stands are still personalized to like promote the employer brand and to help them stand out. And again, I'll mention the one-to-one sessions that you can do over video chat, which still make the experience quite interactive and engaging for both the participants and the recruiters.
So when you've had the employer stands, have they been video chat links or something like that when you've seen them?
Well, you can add like the webinars or pre-recorded videos and stuff like that. So you still have that content that you could possibly do in a normal careers fair, where you'd probably have certain sessions, but you can just have them as links and things like that on the website.
Thanks. So I mean, we've kind of already started delving into this, but what are the key differences between your on-campus career fair and your online careers fairs? And maybe we'll go reverse direction this time. So if you'd like to start.
No worries. So I think obviously the main thing is maybe a lack of face-to-face interaction and a lack of free goodies, because I know a lot of participants come to your stand just for the free stuff and don't even ask any questions. So that's a big difference. I think as well, being online allows for candidates to feel comfortable and ask questions, whereas you know, in normal careers fairs you'll get a lot of people coming to your stand, but more so in groups, and maybe you might have to coax them over or you know, try to get questions out of them. So I feel like we'll probably get a bit more interaction from those you know, who are quite shy. And I think one of the biggest things to mention is we're going to have a wider reach. So you know, we might go to certain areas and not everyone can travel there, but if we have an online fair, we can really hit social mobility and really, you know, attract graduates from universities that we might not have been able to go to before.
Oh, thank you. And that's an interesting point about not be, you know, you may be alone in the room as opposed to being, or you may feel alone even if you are logged on with friends.
Yeah,
that's something that it's going to take time to get used to. Oriane, you know, what were the key differences for you? I know we've already started on this.
Yeah, I think it is around the variety of career fairs out there. So some of them will have a webinar like this where there are multiple people on a session. Some of them will be ran by just one person. Some of them may be a physical kind of stand presence. So you'll log on, you'll see a virtual stand that then replicates that physical element, but there might not be someone behind it. So it might be text, videos, URLs, links. So it can vary quite massively between a lot of different universities, a lot of different suppliers, a lot of companies in terms of how they're running their event. So I would say that's one of the biggest differences to me, that you can't always anticipate exactly black and white what it's going to be. So you need to do your research and look into those guidelines and the description, I suppose, the detail of what's going to be included.
Thank you. That very much, it's a research matter, like looking up where you're going and knowing what you need to tailor for the specific set of employers that are there. Ashlyn, what are the key differences for you? I mean, you know, you've had some recent experience of this as well.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. At the online environment, you almost have to educate yourself as to how to use that to get the optimum experience for you. And you know, as the guys have said, it varies depending on who's actually delivering that virtual event. the virtual environment does provide a really fantastic opportunity for students to engage proactively with employers and give employers the opportunity to find them. So in a lot of these kind of online environments, you'll have to fill out a profile before you engage on the platform. And in instances, employers can see your profile and can reach out to you. So you're almost kind of giving yourself that additional, as a student, the additional edge by having a more complete profile and enabling employers to reach out to you. You know, as I said at the beginning, it's really important that when you're, as a student, when you're going to attend one of these events, that you find out as much as you can about the platform or the environment and how you can use it. So, for example, if there's one-to-one video calls, well, how do you turn on your own camera and your own microphone? And that's really important, because without that, you can't engage in the way that the platform is enabling you to. You know, in a webinar like with Livestorm, is there somewhere that you can put in Q&As or questions at least, you know, so that, again, it's what are all those engagement points and how can you avail of those within a platform?
And I think that sort of leads into our next point, is how, and I can see this popping up in the question boxes as well, is how to make the most of online careers fairs. And I guess the question really is as well, how to present yourself. If this was in person, we'd be recommending CV advice. We'd be recommending, you know, sort of not a particularly formal dress code, but just common sense steps to follow. If we start with you, Ashlyn, what would you recommend to someone who's, as you say, you've got to check your camera setup, but when you're going from that, what's the next thing you'd recommend that people look at to make the most of the career fair?
Yeah, so I think, you know, I'm going to slightly labor the point of tech. So, you know, make sure that, you know, you've good Wi-Fi, that you have headphones that work, that you have, you know, you're well presented, you have a blank background. As you can see, I have a guitar in the back. It's not necessarily that blank, but when then you start to use the platform, if there's the opportunity to set up a profile, complete it to its fullest. You know, give yourself every opportunity to set out your stand, set out your stall. And the same, if you can add in your CV, do that. And what I'd also recommend is look at all the employers that are there. You know, don't just assume that because they're a bank or a tech provider that they only recruit for certain disciplines. Don't take yourself out of that mix. And yeah, I suppose be open to starting conversations. Because as difficult as it may be for some people in a face-to-face environment, you may not have the confidence to start a chat conversation or a face-to-face, but that's why employers are there. They're there to talk to you, so you should avail of that opportunity.
Thanks. And just to pick up, because we've had this in a previous webinar when we're talking about tech and your background and things. I mean, aside from the fact that many programs do allow you to put a custom background, if you want to look like you're on a beach in Hawaii, feel free. But we had a question about video interviews, and I think the thing that came back was that employers can be quite understanding about this. Please do contradict me if I'm wrong, but this was something that came out, is, you know, if you are sitting on a bed or something because you're in a shared family home, people will understand it's coronavirus, it's not normal, we're all getting used to it as well. You know, watching your boss, you know, broadcasting from their attic or something, it's become quite a normal thing. I just wanted to clarify that before anybody sort of got a little bit nervous. So Oriane, what would you look for in students? How could they make the most of an online careers fair?
I think for me, the Q&A piece is quite critical. So a lot of webinars or kind of video sessions or even just virtual stands normally have a place for you to submit your questions, your queries, but because of the volume, so the positive to online career fairs is we're reaching a much wider audience. We're able to get to a lot more students and really educate them, and I love that. The downside is that sometimes we might not be able to cover all of those questions because there's just so much volume to work through. So my advice to get the best out of a careers fair would be to really think about what you want to know about that company. So is it a question that you could find on their website that you could dig out yourself? Is it a generic question, or is it something that you can actually really add value and kind of figure out from this one-on-one interaction? So that would be my advice. Use those Q&As wisely, but make sure you do your research to make sure you're not asking something generic that's right in front of your face on a website that you've just missed.
And that's something we've heard as well from other sectors, where they say, look, if you've done all the research online and all the information is on the website, don't just keep asking questions about the information on the website. That's a common point. Yugochi, what would you recommend to students to make the most of it?
Yeah, I would really agree with that. I can't stress enough how important it is to research the companies that you know are going to be there, and think of those that you really like and the questions that you really want to ask. Because I know I like it when I meet an individual who's, can teach me something about something they've read in the news, or so you just use the insights that you've learned to your advantage to help the conversation to flow with the recruiter, or to ask the right questions to the current graduates who are representing the company. These can be questions like regarding the job opportunities, or the application process, or the company culture, or the work environment. I would also say as well, if you don't know what you want to do, just to kind of keep open-minded, because you don't know what kind of opportunities you might come across, or what companies could, open your mind to them. So I would say those two things.
Thank you.
Also, actually, I have another point. Also, to kind of practice your pitch. What I mean by that is to kind of understand who you are and how you will introduce yourself online. Because if you do go onto these career fairs and you do have like a one-to-one chat with an individual, the conversation has to flow both ways. So just be prepared and find out what it is that you're interested about. And I think those few things will help you.
Thanks. And that used to be something we said to take off CVs, was the personal statement. But it sounds like in this day and age where you've maybe got 2 minutes in a room with someone, you might want to have that statement ready to go, even if it's not printed somewhere. So we wanted to move on to what employers look for at online careers fairs. We've already, Ashlyn already mentioned filling in your profile when you get to your login stages and things like that. I know people are a little bit more nervous about big tech these days and where that information goes. But if employers are going to look at it, it's something that you really do have to fill in. But what would you, if we go the other way again, so you start with you, Yugochi, what would you look for, when you're attending an online career fair?
I would say students who are really genuinely interested in working at MMC, I think they stand out more. Those who have already done their research and understand the different schemes available, and they can tailor their questions to our actual company. I think that's definitely something that's quite important. It just shows that they're proactive. I think that's the main thing I look out for.
Thanks. And Oriane, how about you?
I think when we've previously ran online career fairs this year, obviously since April, I think the students that stand out to me are ones that are really engaged. They have I suppose, a bit of a fierce curiosity. They want to understand more, and you can tell that they are engaged in listening. So they'll say, oh, I know you mentioned this, Oriane, and you spoke about that video interview tool, and you think that's really good. What else would you recommend with XYZ? So I think those types of conversations flow very naturally, and you can tell when a student has bothered to take notes and get involved and really take the value that you're giving them. I think the second thing for me is self-awareness. Now, that's going to sound quite basic, but students that are aware of their strengths and aware of what they're good at is a great starting point. You don't need to know how to apply them yet, but if you know what you're good at, that can open the door. So if you're good with numbers, you could go into data, IT, finance, there's a whole host of different work streams. But I think having that self-awareness straight away will enable you to open those conversations with recruiters to say, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm curious about, how does that translate into your business areas? I think reality is every company is complex. And I know for Experian, for example, some of our service lines you will have never heard of. If I said ECS or EITS, you'd have no clue what they are. And you don't need to. You just need to know, I'm good with numbers. I would love to work with something that gives me that problem-solving element that's going to excite me and give me that passion. So come prepared with that, and that will massively help at a career fair.
Thank you. And that falls back into don't censor yourself out. If you know your skills, don't put yourself out of a role just because you think, oh, well, I don't have quite the right degree or something. Because if you don't know what the employer is looking for, Ashlyn, how about you? What do you look for?
Yeah, I'll just take a more general view as a non-recruiter. I'll take a more general view on it, in that, the fair itself is not where the work begins. The work begins, in the days leading up to it, where you're doing your research about the exhibitors that are going to be there, and exactly that, kind of figuring out initially how you can apply your skill sets within those or to those organizations, and then continuing those conversations on the day of the event, rather than just waiting for the day of the event and trying to do all that research, then start beforehand.
Thanks. And that's also, I mean, that kind of extends both ways, I guess, because you want follow-ups as well afterwards. So you want you need to start out beforehand, looking at your research and getting everything together, and afterwards you want to follow up on the conversations that you've had. And for anybody who's watching, if you're familiar with NextStepSupport, go to the webinar section. I think we've covered a couple of these sorts of things in the past about reaching out to people on LinkedIn. So there's some good webinars on there for you. So if we start with Ashlyn again, what about pitfalls? What are the biggest pitfalls that students need to navigate when they're at an online career fair?
Tech failure, I would say. And I think we've all had kind of a bit of tech failure at some stage over the last few months. So really try and to mitigate that by testing beforehand. So making sure that your camera works and I've said like a broken record, but your camera works and your microphone works and you've strong internet connection. Also, other pitfalls I would say is, maybe the style of engagement. Make sure you're engaging in the right way, so that when you're talking to employers, that I suppose even though you may be sitting in your bedroom, this is still a formal conversation that you're having with employers. Although it's from the comfort of your own home. So they're kind of really the main ones that I would say.
Thanks. And yes, the key with tech and online connections, we've had people attending these webinars who have gone to friends' houses to borrow stronger internet connections, because we know how much damage that can do. Oriane?
I think following on from that engagement piece, I think for students themselves, the biggest pitfall is their own engagement. So the key difference with a virtual careers fair is you're almost being lectured to, because it doesn't have that kind of free-flowing element. So you're not getting energy when you jump between stands, you're walking around your student union or your campus. So I think it is easy for your energy levels to actually drop and to kind of drone out and stop fully paying attention, because naturally it is very hard to fully focus on a webinar when things feel like it's just talk. So I think that's a big pitfall to be mindful of. Get yourself a fizzy drink or a glass of water, or have a chocolate bar nearby, something to give you those sugar levels back up when you need it. And if you need to, if you're not on video, stand up, walk around your bedroom, if that's going to help. I think the second point for me will be around notes. So if you are attending a virtual careers fair or a webinar, or where you're going to get valuable information, remember to take notes. You have the privilege that you're in your home, you're in an environment where you can actually remember what's been said. You're not dashing between 6 or 7 different employers in one day. So make the notes that are going to count, that will help with your future application. And remember to, I suppose, try and organise that in a way that when the career fair finishes or the webinar finishes, you can look back over them and remember what you actually learned.
Thank you. And I think that's really interesting. Like you say, keep the sugar levels up, get the notes. It's putting yourself in a mindset that a lot of people have had to adapt to with the social distancing measures. It's making sure that you because you can at the moment, if you are remote working, turn up in your pajamas, a half-eaten toast over the computer. You could do that, but a lot of people have realized very quickly you need to get out of that mindset. So the same thing when you're going to an online careers fair, you want to treat it as a work based event. It's part of your career journey. So you need to get into that mindset, whether that's by upping your sugar levels or making it formalized in notes. That's really sounds really sensible to me. Yugochi, what are the biggest pitfalls do you think for students?
Yeah, I think not being prepared enough. Okay, you might know what employees are going to be there, but how are you actually spending your time on the online fair? So say make sure you plan your day. If there's any live sessions that you want to attend, make sure you jot that down and make sure you arrive on time and listen to that. And yes, I think note taking is key. So if you're listening to these videos or you're watching webinars, definitely take notes, because who knows, in the future you might have got an interview at that company, and from taking those notes prior to, you've got some talking points that you can bring up. So I'd say definitely plan your day, and also don't forget to network. I think you're going to be talking to so many people online, so you might talk to other students or the recruiters and graduates who are in the business. So I think it's really important to put yourself out there and exchange contact details, whether that's on LinkedIn, and to afterwards as well. So don't forget, it is a place for you to network as well. So those are my two key things.
Thanks, and those are brilliant as well, because it's although the recruitment processes are often impartial and objective, and everything's done on the basis of your skills, it's a good icebreaker to say, I met so and so at your careers fair and they said this to me, and having that knowledge to hand, whether it's in notes or otherwise, is absolutely invaluable. We've got one more question before we want to open up to questions. And that would be your top tips for students heading into an online fair. Should we pick one or two, and if we go back again, start with you, Yugochi.
Okay, I think, just to reiterate, really do your research. Find out exactly what it is, what career or industry you want to be in, and do your research around the industry, around the company. Find insights, just so that you're better prepared. So that yes, when you are online and listening to webinars and such, you have a better understanding and you can take more in. I'd definitely say, actually, if you are talking to people online, make sure you're using business, like professional language, and not any slang. It's easy to think just because you're in a chat box that you can shorten words and things like that. So I would stay clear from doing that. And people might not want to do this, but I would say try to wear something professional. I know you're at home and you're probably in your room on your bed, but it's your mindset at the end of the day. And if you feel like you are dressed to impress, then you're going to do much better online. So it would be my top tips. Brilliant.
Thank you very much. Oriane.
So I'm going to drop 5 for you guys. They're really short and punchy. But number 1, follow the technology guidelines. Make sure you've pre-prepared, technology works, you're all set up. Check your background. Make sure that it is fairly clean as much as you can. Listen and take notes throughout the day. Go on mute when it's appropriate. I cannot tell you how many career fairs or webinars I've been on where students will get involved, but the background noise throughout the day can actually distract. When you're asking a question, go off mute by all means, but when you're listening, it's better to stay on mute so that you can keep that level of concentration. My last point will be follow up on LinkedIn. So I know for a fact, if you type in Oriane on LinkedIn, I don't think there's many in the world, let alone the Midlands. So you'll be able to find me. But we've had success stories where we went to a careers fair. There was a gentleman that asked loads of questions. He was really engaged. He followed up with me on LinkedIn after. He asked a couple of questions, and I was able to redirect him to a software development graduate job we had available. And it was something that he completely missed. He didn't see it, and that gave him the opportunity to apply, all because he followed up and he was engaged. So my top 5, check your background setup, follow technology guidelines, listen and take notes, go on mute when it's appropriate, and follow up on LinkedIn. Boom.
Perfect. That's whizzing through. Thank you. And Ashlyn.
Yeah, look, I've been talking about it all afternoon, tech, making sure that it works. So I'm not going to keep going on about it, but also plan your time. So depending on how long the event is for, make sure you know what sessions you want to attend, who you want to talk to. but also before the event, make sure you know how the platform works, what the engagement methods are. So even, you know, even if it's on Zoom, that you can put your hand up on Zoom. How do you do that? If it's a little bit more technical than that, you know, how do you fill in your profile? How do you access one-to-one chat? That sort of thing. And the event organizers should have that information prior to the event.
Thank you. And the tech thing is not only making sure you know how it works. I think you can usually do in most of the programs, they have a settings option where you can go in and do a test run of your video and your audio. I mean, I know when the whole pandemic started, there were all sorts of videos of people who'd accidentally turned themselves into a potato on Microsoft Teams, and you know, they left it for the whole meeting going like that. So it's just making sure that you don't overuse the features as well as underuse the features, I guess. We seem to have Yugochi. I'm hoping she will log back in shortly. There we go.
Sorry.
Prime example of technology mishaps. It's you don't always need to apologise. You just pick yourself up and carry on, and we all understand.
Yeah, we've all been very much through, I think, a lot of this. So I'm going to open the floor up to questions, and we'll start with, because we've got a couple that are really top ranking. And if the panel would, if you'd like to answer one, please just shout out, and we'll go from there. So the first one is, how do we find when these online careers fairs will be taking place? Who would like to go?
So I would personally say check in with your employability team at university. And the reason is your employability team are often connected to a lot of suppliers, a lot of employers directly. Their job is to stay connected with any kind of resources that will help their students source employment. So definitely speak to your employability team, your careers team at your institute or at your college. That will definitely give you an advantage to help you find out what's happening when.
That's brilliant, thank you.
There are career fair listings for Ireland on gradireland.com, and then I know the Target Jobs virtual event is listed on Target Jobs as well. But I think, yeah, your career services as well will have information about virtual employer events that are taking place as well.
Thank you. And I'm actually, I'm going to, when we move on to the next question, I'll just go and log on to Target Jobs and Grad Island. I'll grab a couple of the event schedules and I'll try and pop them over on links to everybody who's in the question room at the moment. So let's look down the question list. So the next question. So we've kind of covered some of this. We'll see if anybody would like to chip in as well. How can we most effectively network with companies at a virtual careers event? Who would like to chip in?
I would say, so each employer will have their own booth. So I think it's really important that you find yourself there and use the chat function. What else? And also, you know, if you're able to go on to video chat, I think it's really important to just show that you're around. I mean, I think the difference between a normal careers fair is that we wouldn't know your name beforehand unless we spoke to you. But in the, you know, online fairs, your name is around everywhere. So we can see it in the chat, we can see where you've been. So it's very important to be present. So that's my advice.
If I could just jump in on that as well, when you are reaching out to employers via a chat function, just be prepared that there may be some delay in the employers getting back to you. You know, where in a face-to-face environment, you can see how busy a stand is. You can't see that in a virtual space. So just be prepared to expect some delay in people coming back to you.
I think that's something that we listed in some of our very earliest coronavirus articles, was just at the moment you have to be patient, and it's really, really difficult when you're looking for a job, and it's really, really difficult when you want to network and you want to get out there, but patience is a virtue now more than ever. I just sent around a little call to action there with a link for Grad Island. I'll do another one in a second. So this is again, we've covered bits of this, but this is sort of more specific. How do we make ourselves look different from the others in an online career fair? And that's a tricky one.
I would personally say you need to remain authentic. And what I mean by that is, don't tell employers what you think they want to hear. Don't sell us, you know, some personality that isn't you, that isn't truly authentic. I think if you get the opportunity to have any one-on-one networking, to have a one-on-one video chat at some of the booths, or, you know, let's say you do use the chat function and then follow up on LinkedIn and a conversation flows, you want to be authentic, because that will make yourself look different. We are all unique, and every company wants that. No business at the moment wants robots. They don't want clones of people. They like the diversity, the different viewpoints. So be confident in who you are and just be your natural self. I know that's really hard to do, but don't panic, don't fluster. Just remember, we're all human beings, and we just want to get to know you as well as for you to get to know us.
Thank you. I just want to add to that, because we've had this come up before, and one of the in-person careers fairs. Don't discount you as a person. Don't discount your hobbies, I think is kind of the takeaway. There was one example that was given by it was a barrister's career fair, and someone had one of the barristers was relaying a story that someone had been a professional gin taster. And it sounded like the most, you would think, how on earth is that relevant to the bar? But they remembered that person, because it's such an unusual thing to say, well, yes, of course, I'm into professional gin tasting as well. That it's the kind of thing that there may be skills that they've gained from that, maybe, you know, in a social interaction, they may be organizing, whatever it is, but it made them stick out in the mind. So as long as they have the academic grades and everything as well, they've got that extra thing that just helps people remember you. And if you can mention that kind of thing online as well as in person, then that it's going to have the same effect. Yeah, I would hope. So scrolling back to the question list, this is quite a good one that's just jumped up the list that I think is a good one to answer. How to follow up on LinkedIn or email without sounding desperate or creepy? Excellent wording of that question. Thank you, Ryan. Who would like to tackle this one?
I don't mind jumping in. I think we covered this on actually the previous Next Steps webinar that we did all around online networking. So if anyone hasn't checked that out, please have a look, because we do cover quite a few tips on there. But I think it depends on the context of what you're following up with and what you're wanting to say. So if you're adding a connection and you simply just want to stay connected to them, you can say that. You can say, hi, just want to stay connected, kind of see what you post, learn your hints and tips. If you have a genuine question, then follow up. And hi there, Orianne, saw you at the Next Step Support webinar. Really liked what you said about XYZ. I had a follow-up question we didn't get to cover. Do you mind if I ask XYZ? Hope to hear from you soon. I think it's all about the language and the wording and treating it as a professional network. So this isn't, you know, your Tinder profile. This isn't, you know, your Snapchat or your Instagram. I think just be mindful of what do you want to get across? What are you asking for? And just be open with that.
Thank you. I think that's a good answer. And I mean, it's obviously as well, don't use the LinkedIn default hello, connect me please message. Like it just a little note to say why you're doing this. It goes a long way. I think it's a little bit more human. Would anyone else like to chip in? Just if you've had connections on LinkedIn, maybe there are things you would recommend to avoid based on past experience, but please, would anyone else like to share?
Look, I think just about context, you know, exactly where did you meet this person? Where have you had this conversation before or similar? Because, you know, if you're reaching out to a recruiter, chances are there's a lot of people reaching out to that recruiter post an event. So if you can contextualize it and maybe refresh in the recruiter's mind where they've already spoken to you from, that would go a long way.
Thank you.
I agree with both points, to be fair.
Yeah. That's sensible advice. Thanks.
Yes.
So I'm moving down. We've got, so I think we've kind of covered, someone's asked, is it important to carry a CV to careers fairs? I think we've established that is now sort of very much part of the process. You know, when you're filling in your profile, when you're first logging in, and having a CV in person and online is obviously helpful if you're looking for a job. So I think that one's kind of been covered. We've been working on how we can make the most of careers fairs. There's a good one here about notes, and this is, I think this is a valid one. Would it be appropriate to take notes in an interactive environment while people are talking to you? Should we try to remember to write things down afterwards? I don't want to appear rude by taking notes and not looking at the person who is speaking. I mean, I've been doing a lot of video interviews lately, so I would like to ask this question as well. Is it appropriate to take notes while people are talking?
I would think it's okay as long as you let them know beforehand. I think that's quite important, because obviously via video you can't really see what someone's doing, so if they're not that eye contact, you don't know if they're interested. So I think if you let them know ahead of time, I will be taking notes, is that okay? They're most likely going to say yes, so I think it's just giving that heads up.
That's really solid advice, and I mean, obviously there's a balance as well. So you know, you don't necessarily need to get everything down verbatim. You can, you know, as long as they're aware you're taking notes intermittently. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think the only thing I'd add to that is, if you are on a webinar where you're typing notes, remember to put yourself on mute if it's appropriate, because you can hear that clacking sound. Most microphones built into a laptop are quite good nowadays, so they will pick up on those minor sounds. So depending on the format of the event, if you're not on video and it's not kind of one-on-one, if it's like this where you're kind of in the background and you don't need to be on sound, great, put yourself on mute, type away, make whatever notes you need.
Thank you. I'm sorry, because I'm just tweaking with the question, with exactly not looking when you're, yes.
Prime example of what not to do.
That's exactly what not to do. So yes, I think I'm just trying to keep tabs on everything as the questions shuffle up and down. So the next one we have is, how should I sell myself to employers if their job descriptions contain some specific skills that I'm not very good at? Now we've covered part of this before, but this may be maybe not quite meeting the requirements. What do we think?
I'm going to step away from this one. No, I'm going to step away from this one. It's not my skill set. So go ahead.
Okay, I'll jump in then. I think what you've got to think about is, when you say selling yourself to an employer, what do you mean? So what do you think you are lacking? So if, say, for example, I don't know, you're wanting, let's use the software development example. Let's say you're wanting to be a software developer, but you have done a degree in physics. So you haven't got any courses in, say, Node or any HTML or any kind of Python coding. So you feel that you're lacking. I would say there are a couple of things. So the first is, ignore that side for now. Focus on the transferable skills that you do have. Focus on the positives that are already existing there. So a lot of graduate roles aren't just about having experience, because the point of a graduate job is to give you experience. We're not expecting you to walk in with 10 years experience in something. I think it's more your passion for learning, that real curiosity and eagerness, and I suppose that self-drive. You know, you're not going to be spoon-fed and waiting for things. You're willing to grab it and take ownership. I think employers really value that in students, and that's a key skill. My second point would be, if you know you're not particularly good at something and you know it's a downfall for a particular sector you really want to go into. So let's go back to software development. If you do want to go into that, look at some of the free online courses. So there are companies called Future Learn, the Open University, LinkedIn Learning. There are hundreds of free resources out there for you to get hands-on and upskill in those areas that you feel you're lacking. And that's only going to show to employers how committed you are to going into that field. So take ownership, be proud of what you do have to bring to the table and what your great qualities are, and what you think you're lacking. If you have the time and resource and availability, try it. What's the worst that's going to happen? If you're not great at it, fine. We all start from somewhere. That's how we learn.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I think, you know, if you are lacking, you definitely have to kind of big up the skills that you do have and really concentrate on those. And, you know, the majority of us don't have everything to begin with, so you're always going to build on that. And I think definitely having that eagerness and that enthusiasm and that work ethic will definitely, you know, help you to stand out a bit more. But in the meantime, if you can, check out the websites that do show where you can train up yourself up a little bit.
Just with that, sorry, Matt, just with that, I mean, that's the ideal reason to attend and engage in a virtual environment or a virtual fair where you can ask these questions. Don't also assume that a recruiter will think that you're lacking in those skills as well. You know, don't take yourself out of the competition because you think that you are. Have a conversation and see if it is the case, and recruiters and company representatives will be more than happy to help you and to point out resources that will assist you.
Yeah, one of our best hires at Experian was actually a bus driver prior to joining, and he was able to sell all of those transferable skills, that patience, that empathy, you know, that face-to-face interaction with a customer, and he was brilliant. And he didn't come from the technical background you would expect. So to echo that point, Ashley, do not rule yourself out.
I think that's absolutely perfect. And I'm not plugging Next Step Support. I just think this is useful. If you go to the webinar section, we did one on employability some time back. And there was a really good coverage on the kinds of courses that are out there. I think we've mentioned the Open University and some of the more sort of formal qualification routes. But there were a group of employers talking about the sort of online courses you can undertake, because there have been many that have gone free since the pandemic struck, obviously with people at home, a lot of time on their hands. Everything from coding to kind of various other sort of employability skills. So do go and have a look for that if you have the time, because I think that's genuinely quite useful. Yeah, just wanted to add that. So the next question we have is another quite interesting one. How will the size of these virtual careers fairs differ to traditional ones we are used to? So can we expect there to be a wider range of firms, or will they be a lot more intimate? So in our panel have experience with virtual careers fairs. How can we expect them to differ in size?
That's a real how long is a piece of string, to be honest with you, in that it depends on the fair, who's running it. It also, you know, in the current environment, you know, the number of employers that are out to engage. So I mean, look, we ran a fair and there was 18 employers. We're running another one now in a few weeks, and we're looking at around 100 employers. So it really depends on the event itself. So I don't think your engagement should change really in the way the way you engage at the fair. Again, as we spoke about earlier, just be prepared for a bit of a delay, and especially if it's a bigger event, just be prepared for that delay in response. But that's as far as I could go on that.
And I think just to add, some of these fairs go on longer than one day. So even though it might be shorter than a normal fair, you might see it for 3 days in 1 week, for example. So definitely look out for that.
And actually those multi-day events, don't just assume because it's the same employers every day. There's plenty of different content to continuously engage with across those days. So be informed about every single day and how you can engage on those days.
It's worth noting that the content will differ, as well as some, I mean, certainly depending on the type of virtual careers fair you attend. Some of them may have, you know, like main stages where you'll have everybody who's allowed to log in can log in, and there may be 1,000 people there with you. And you also have the more sort of private events where there may just be a handful of people talking via chat with an employer. So it's a little bit adaptive depending on the event, I think is what we're saying. As Ashlyn put it, how long is a piece of string? But I hope that helps. So we have, what is some of the critical information that you should include when pitching yourself? When we talked about our pitches earlier, what would we say?
Oof, that's a bold question.
I think one of the most important things is that you want to kind of highlight what you want the employer to know about you. So definitely let them know if you're currently a student or what you're currently studying. And if you can, share something about the employer that you want to know more about, I think. I feel like the more you research about a particular company, it should come a bit more natural. It doesn't have to be too long. It's definitely just about yourself and what you're currently doing and what you're looking for. I think that's what I would put in my pitch.
Yeah, I think that authenticity piece comes back as well. So share some of your personality with the employer and with the recruiter. So it's not just, hi, I'm James, I'm doing a degree in history, I'm passionate about this. You can also talk about, you know, I have a hobby at the side where I play Call of Duty and I'm Twitch streaming and I'm getting to know the data analytics of this and, you know, trying to get more followers and viewers. Things like that are really interesting, and employers like that. They like to see the outside hobbies and things that you throw yourself into that you're passionate about. So think about your pitch being a blend of, yeah, the professional, you know, your degree, what you're doing, but also that personal, what makes you unique, and blend them together in a bit of a short summary.
Thanks. I think that's a really interesting example to take as well, Twitch streaming, and I'd never actually thought about it, but I suppose with social media, the analytics and everything behind it, it's quite, it is something that's a skill, that's a professional skill as well as a personal hobby. That's actually it's quite a nice example. That actually covers a little bit. Someone was asking whether, you know, how informal do you need to be when you're communicating with people, and I think that covers it. You can be yourself, is what we've been saying all through this. So hopefully that answers your question as well before we get down there. Now we talked a little bit about merchandise earlier. Someone's written, often at in-person careers fairs, you get lots of booklets and leaflets about applications and the company. Is this something still accommodated online? What sort of material do we get beyond the norm at a virtual careers fair? Because I mean, obviously every company will have a website these days.
So there are booths, so like as at a normal event, but it will have, you know, potentially some video content from the employer. There are downloadable links. You'll have links out to those programs or those brochures that you would ordinarily have received as well. But also in some platforms there are actual jobs that you can apply for, graduate programs that you can apply for, or click to find out more information. So I would actually say in a virtual environment there is more information available than in a physical fair.
That makes total sense. I don't know if anyone would like to add to that. I mean, Oriane, have you been putting up information for your, when you've been taking part in careers fairs, or
Absolutely. I think a key point that students might not be aware of, that's probably more on the employer side, but a lot of employers get ready for, you know, September, October, November, knowing that that is the big season for our world. That's, you know, that's like Christmas to me. It's my favorite thing. But be prepared. COVID has actually put things back for some people. So I know at Experian, we are currently working on our website, but it's not ready for launch yet. So the information we have at the moment, unfortunately, isn't selling the best of us because we are slightly behind due to COVID, which, you know, everyone's struggling to adapt to, shall we say. So I think be prepared that some employers will be absolutely ready. Some will still be editing and updating content on a regular basis, so keep updated. But in terms of what we've had at career fairs, we've had digital brochures that we normally give out. So the flyers that we have printed, we've got digital versions of that we link. And we also have an interactive guide. So we have a page tiger pack. Now, a lot of you guys will have no idea what that means, but if you connect with me on LinkedIn, you'll be able to see the link probably in the next half an hour, I say. I'll put it at the very top of my profile. We've created our own interactive guide to help students navigate whilst our website is in the interim. So I'd say just be prepared. Some are ready, some are in progress, some don't have it. So figure what questions you need to ask from that.
Thank you. You go, is that the same sort of experience you've had as well?
Yeah, I would say that's exactly the same as us. Yeah.
I think for students attending a virtual fair, be prepared that if to provide, you know, a follow-up email address to get updated information when recruiters have that information. So just be prepared for that too.
Excellent. I'm just going to jump down a couple of questions because I think we have covered some of these that are in the list at the moment. But there is one. This is broadly about jobs, but I think this is going to be applied to online fairs as well. And this is: will international students have an opportunity to get hired due to the current situation? And I think because we are here to talk about careers fairs, it's as an international student approaching a careers fair where you may not be in the country, or you know English may not be your first language, depending on the company you're applying to. What's the recommendations from our panel here as to how to tackle an online careers fair as an international student who may not be able to travel?
I would say be really honest and upfront about that. So I know for some of our graduates that have just started with us, we've told them not to relocate. So they're not based in Nottingham, they're scattered around the country, and we're openly saying to them there's no expectation to be in the office at this current time. And when we do, hopefully, go to employers are flexible. We understand that this is a challenging time, and for some people, they go home to their parents, and that can be overseas. That doesn't diminish their value and what credibility they have and passion they can bring to a company. So just be honest at the start of an application or when you're speaking to an employer about your circumstance, but also let them know what you are flexible on, that you are willing to be, you know, around the offices when it's appropriate. But for us, certainly at Experian, there is no expectation. It's not mandatory. That's not how we're operating.
I would agree with being honest, just because there's a lot of companies as well that do not sponsor international students for visas. So it's definitely about being honest and letting them know that you do have the right to work in the UK, because I think it will only be beneficial for both the company and yourselves if you are upfront about that.
Thank you. And I want to say for the record, I don't think that's changed because of the pandemic. You still do have, we've been talking about research again all the way through this webinar, and knowing whether companies will sponsor you for a visa and things like it. This is all research you would have to do in person as well as during the pandemic. Yeah, but thank you to you both for covering that, because I think it's one that a little bit different from some of the others we've had. So the next one we have: how do I sell myself with limited experience? And I think we're going to make these the last couple of questions because we're beginning to run out of time.
I think with limited experience, definitely focus on the skills that you do have, and I think that's a point Oriane brought up earlier. Sorry. So definitely by going through like the job description and really thinking about your current experiences, whether at university or any volunteering efforts that you do, or any supporting teams that you're on. There's lots of experience that you do have that's transferable that you might not realize at the time. So it's definitely having that research and preparing and really thinking across, okay, university I did this, I was part of this society and so on, and outside of this I played for the football team or I swam. There are lots of transferable skills within those activities that you can bring to the forefront and highlight. So there isn't really such thing as limited experience. You just have to really think about it and draw from that, especially because obviously as a graduate, we're not expecting you to have years of experience. So it's really just going through your CV and just looking at what you bring to us.
Thank you. It's Oriane, is that the same for you as well?
Yeah, a lot of that resonates with me completely. I think what students need to remember is a lack of experience doesn't diminish a lack of potential. That potential is still there, regardless of whether you've got a 6-month internship, a year in industry placement, or a part-time job. It's not going to diminish the potential that you have. So I would say dig deep to look at those skills that you can bring. Ignore that side. Don't let that kind of play on your mind and feel like, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not going to get the job, I haven't got this. I think it's easy to go in a downward spiral. So my advice would be actually remember that potential, remember that passion and eagerness that you have, and really show that to a company and be resilient in that process. So it's something we haven't covered so far, but I'll try and be short and succinct with it. resilience is critical in this pandemic, that there are going to be setbacks and you might not get that opportunity straight away, or things might not work the way you want. So you've got to have that ability to bounce back and stay positive. I think that's a really big this webinar.
Thank you. Ashlyn, I mean, we deal with a lot of employers as well, you for Grad Island and me with NextStepSupport, and that we, you know, some of the things we've covered talking about, you know, there's no such thing as limited experience. Very often, some of the conversations we've had with big tech employers, that, you know, they say, well, everybody comes out with the degree. It's not just the degree we're looking for. We're looking for the social skills. We're looking for the other kind of softer skills and communication skills. And as Oriane's mentioned, resilience is usually on there as well. So you may have that in your personal life, you may have that from your hobby, you may have that, you know, from your family life. So, you know, make sure you use that when you're coming to present yourself. So we have covered sort of where to find virtual careers fairs a little bit, but that's the last question on there. I think I'm just going to bounce this off very, very quickly, just to say that we've established you can go to check out employers' websites and keep an eye doing your research on employers and social media. Keep an eye on your university's website, because they may have it, your careers services, and any employability initiatives that they run, so keep an eye on those. And you can also find sort of more broader general resources, like we've got Ashlyn here from Grad Island, which is, it will cover virtual fairs, and we'll have an events page, which I put around a link to earlier. The same thing with Target Jobs, and the same thing if you keep an eye on NextStepSupport. So there are resources out there. It will come down to what you're looking for. I think, you know, I just wanted to round that off as one of the last things that I think we cover, is where you can go to look for virtual careers fairs. So keep an eye on your universities, employers, and general websites. We've just given you a list there. I think we are out of time, unfortunately, but I do just want to say a big thank you to our panel. I'm just going to run around for those of you that may have turned up a little bit late. We have Ashlyn Nimuri, who's the events manager at Graduate Careers Site Grad Island. Thank you very much for joining us today, Ashlyn. We have Oriane Whiteman, who is the Senior Talent Acquisition Partner at the consumer credit company Experian. And we have Ugochi Nwachaku, early careers recruiter at professional services firm Marsh & McLennan. I'd like to say a big thank you to all our panel. Please pop a thank you in the chat as well if you can, because it's always nice to see. I hope this has been useful to you all out there, wherever you're social distancing. Stay safe. And just one more big thank you for the panel. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Bye all.
Bye.
Thanks.